Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to render our profuse apologies for the technical difficulties. We do know that we are under load shedding. We apologize for the disruption as well from the current panel discussion. We are about to conclude that panel discussion, so we are back on the grid. Unfortunately, it was load shedding. All of us are currently undergoing the challenges, but I thank Cape Media that they're able to broadcast despite of some of these delays and challenges we're experiencing with Eskom. But ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the grid. I hope you took that time to get your juice, your water, and let us conclude this panel discussion on sustainable cities before we enter the energy seminar. And do note that we've given you a direct example of when we speak about energy transition and energy crisis. So at least you know what we'll be talking about. But without further ado, we want to conclude the previous panel discussion. Please do stick to your screens. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us in our session entitled Collaboration for
Together and share some of their best initiatives, and the cities were learning from each other. We were also bringing together, we also brought together the local government officials, and they appreciated the knowledge co-production process. And in so doing, some of the research findings and recommendations automatically found their way into formulation of policies. We also took note of the fact that when we were undertaking this research work, we were bringing together the global issues as well as local issues together. So we noted that in as much as the SDGs are global in nature, to achieve them, we must have practical initiatives that which are effective at the local level. And I would also want to say the nature of CLIP, the structure of CLIP, that is able to draw a pool of experienced researchers from various universities. For example, I come from Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University of Science and Technology, but we are also able to work with researchers from other institutions within Kenya and also from other countries. As I've summarized there, if you look at this dissemination process, there is the knowledge co-production that was coming out very strongly. Then there is the international network of city platforms. So of all these cities that we're working with, each one had deliberately formulated a platform that acted as a neutral space where some of these urban challenges could be discussed. And of course, peer-to-peer learning. And another thing that we noted was to strengthen horizontal and multi-level collaboration. This was very, very important because we could as well come together in the city of Kisumu and also activate this kind of collaboration. You realize that when dealing with some of the issues that are affecting residents of a particular city, sometimes it might be difficult for you to engage with them if you are coming from the same city, having the same experience. But if you have someone that gives some global perspective, someone from outside the city, then that creates an opportunity for the stakeholders to listen. So we had a number of times when we had international researchers coming to Kisumu, and were able to engage with the local government officials at all levels of governance, even at the national level. The fifth one, that is embedding researchers in government departments, this was a good initiative that we learned from Cape Town that we were engaging with, and this is something we can learn from. We also had general findings as we were working with the SDGs. One thing that we realized is that the city authorities in almost all the cities that we're dealing with are willing to mainstream the SDGs in the existing development frameworks, but as long as they are relevant and of value to the respective cities. So if any of the SDGs is not relevant, then they don't pay attention to it. We also noted data gaps, data quality, non-compliance with methodological standards and non-availability of disaggregated data as some of the major challenges. Data is not produced annually. Annual reporting on SDGs are based on estimations and projections of varying and unverified degree of accuracy. So there was also challenges with the consistent data. The main sources of data that we realized are administrative surveys and census. Administrative data are available every year, and they are compiled in the annual economic survey. However, for surveys and census, data is obtained from households and establishments, and these are based on census done after every 5 years. Of course, in Kenya, we have census done after every 10 years. Continuation of the findings, different institutions within the cities we noted have some overlapping mandates. And this we realized that could create conflict, but also create an opportunity for synergy. In Kenya, we noted the devolved governance system that creates 2 levels with devolved functions. Sometimes these functions are conflicting, but if they are harmonized, they are able to work well and achieve more. We noted the fact that there is need to build capacity of the personnel, engage with the SDG at the city levels and below, if we really want to cascade the SDG implementation processes below the city level. This is something that was lacking. We noted that the structure was very good at the national level, the regional level, up to the city level. Then from the city level, nothing was getting down to the local level. Correct reporting on the SDG requires clear definition and demarcation of urban and city boundaries. This was particularly noted in Kisumu, where the city boundaries is not aligned to the county boundaries, and yet the national reporting is based on the county boundaries. So we are not able to get, especially the information, to measure the targets and the indicators for SDG number 11. And also even the immediate lower reporting level, the city boundary still is not aligned to some specific boundaries that can be easily measured. We had also specific policy recommendations based on the nature and the structure of the research that we had over the last 10 years. And we noted the importance of establishing an international research network that could connect various cities to provide opportunity for city-to-city peer learning, and also provide guidance from an international perspective. Many times we realize engagement with the SDGs at the city level sometimes does not pay attention to global issues. So we just deal with the local issues, but you forget important issues like that relates to pollution and greenhouse gas emissions at the local level. We also noted the importance of establishing city research platforms. This gives an opportunity for researchers from the universities also to engage with the implementation of the SDGs. There is lack of staff in most of the cities that we are dealing with, and as such, they do not pay attention to some of these issues of SDGs. The researchers have a mandate to deal with new ideas, and therefore, if research topics can be crafted out of these SDG issues, then the researchers will be able to participate in this process. And that's why we are saying then that as it happened in Cape Town, there's need to have some contracts, MOUs between the city authorities and the city platforms, and this would reinforce the lack of the limited capacity at the local level, and also channel resources towards SDGs and new urban agenda implementation processes. Some continuation of this recommendation, embedding researchers to relevant city departments. We noted that in the university research department, for example, in the university where I am, there is a whole division that deals with research, innovation, and outreach. And here we have experienced and well-learned individuals, researchers, who are able to engage with these issues. So if there is an opportunity of attaching some of them on these in the relevant city departments, then that will be able to tap on their knowledge in a more efficient way. Then also establishing formal working relationships among the stakeholders and institutions at the city level. We noted that the operations of different stakeholders at the city levels are disjointed, and some of them are doing the same thing, and that results into waste resources. If we can establish some working relationship, then we are going to reduce on the duplication of this of some of these issues and focus on the things that can really speed up the implementation processes. And we also noted that sometimes if there is no relationship, I may be having some important data that would be very critical for the reporting on some of these indicators, but the other partner within the city is not aware of that. So it goes as lack of data, and yet it is just that we do not know that this data is available in another place. We are also coming up with the recommendation to invest more resources in efforts to fill the data gaps and strengthen engagement with the government institutions mandated to give statistical information. And as I've noted, that the SDGs only become relevant if it adds some value to the ongoing work at the local within the city. So we should enhance the relevance of SDGs, explain the relevance of SDGs targets and indicators to the local planning and policy making for the city authorities. And we should also set up a monitoring and evaluation unit to work alongside the implementation unit. In most of the cities, for example, in Kisumu, the implementation unit at the city level was also the monitoring and evaluation unit. So there was some conflicts, and we could not establish the accuracy of the information that they were giving. This was the nature of the research team. The director of the Ministry of Urban Features is there. We have on the far right is the researcher from South Africa. We have the researcher from Gothenburg, researcher from Shimla, and researcher from Buenos Aires in Argentina. So it was a composition of different researchers from different areas, bringing different perspectives, but of course coming together at the focal point through the director of Mr. Urban Futures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. A really rich set of recommendations here, I think, on bringing research and local governance closer together. And I think something to appreciate about that is your point was the value of an outsider perspective and an international perspective to enrich the conversations that are going on locally. So I wonder if I can invite all of our speakers to turn on their cameras and join us kind of for a reflection together. Corby, Michael has spoken a little bit about the value of international research genders and co-learning across cities. And I think this is very much at least sort of bread and butter to bring cities together and let conversations emerge. And I think often there are unexpected similarities, as Michael has shared, as actually all of our speakers have shared, across sectors. So I wonder if you could share a bit on what your experiences have been in building city-to-city collaborations and why a South-South learning is important, and maybe share some examples of where that's occurred.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to congratulate all the speakers. I think everybody brought a different angle and a different perspective to this topic. Essentially, I heard a lot of same sentiment and same values that we are promoting, and that's very heartening from such a diverse group of panelists coming out here. But just quickly on the research side, certainly, Michael, you highlighting an exceptional case here. You know, we wish all research projects could be of that that nature in the way that co-production is taken so seriously, and that it's a two-way process, and that cities are informing fundamentally from the outset the research agendas with their research partners, and that their research partners almost go on a long-term journey with the city, and it's not a once-off getting the academic results out. You spoke about data, etc. The continent is rich with data, but it's not necessarily the data that the rest of the world is used to. It's sometimes anecdotal data, but people understand, people know through centuries what the past was like and how things have changed. But at the same time, there are critical data gaps. For instance, if you just look at wastewater and water systems, and systems here are a very, very good way of demonstrating. We are losing data, simple information really, on how water flows in and out of our cities, where the pipes are, where the pumps are, which are in working order, which wastewater systems are functioning, which ones are bypassed, which ones are buried, which ones are no longer serviced, you know. So that level of practical data is incredibly valuable for a city manager to understand where to put their budgets. If they want to, for instance, maintain and strengthen their infrastructure. And so I think not all research contributions have to be new thinking and innovative. Some of it can be just assisting cities to get basic information that they need to basically manage their cities better on a day-to-day basis. And that is in essence speaking to the SDGs very directly in terms of SDG targets. So we've done an interesting exercise here in South Africa with Salga from where Tilly comes from in her previous life. And it was astounding to me to see how much of the mandates that cities actually have, that local municipalities are implementing on a daily basis, budgeting for and implementing under what they would call basic service delivery, actually speak directly to SDG indicators and targets in many of the SDGs. You know, so there's a lot of commonality, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, I think, in terms of linking what cities are doing closer to SDG targets, etc. And it's not often realized by all national governments that this data and this information and this progress is happening in cities, and that it's already part of their mandates, and to invest in that within a country budget, within a fiscal a process within a country, you know, is fairly easy and relatively simple to do, and that can take the SDGs a lot further down the line in terms of reaching or attaining some of those targets. So I really like the approach that you're providing in terms of a research attitude, really taking hands on a long-term basis with cities. We do the same, and city-to-city learning, Paul, for me is not about coming in and out as a consultant into a process. You know, what Telly described as the work in the Kucha project is a long-term investment as well, and this is what ICLEI relates to very much. For us, it's a journey. It's a journey towards sustainability with a member city of our network. And yes, it's wonderful if we can bring tangible projects and tangible funds from time to time to a specific city. It's not always possible because we have to raise all those funds ourselves in a very competitive world, being project-based ourselves. But being a member of ICLEI allows those cities to be part of the ICLEI family and to leapfrog and to learn from each other in a very tangible way. One thing that came out of COVID, one of the many good things that came out of COVID, with all the heartbreak and tragedy, of course, as well, is that ICLEI established Learn with ICLEI Africa as a virtual platform, develop courses, develop MOOCs, and go on a journey of learning and exploration together. And that is something I want to see building out a lot. It was very interesting for us during the first phase of COVID in the early days, how many cities simply turned to us out of sheer need to connect and hear what other cities are doing, phoning ICLEI, WhatsApping us day in, day out, asking, what is that city doing? How is that city responding to this? I'm out of water. My hospitals are full. I'm not getting answers immediately from our national government because they're setting up systems, but I have an immediate need right now. And we were able to put them in touch with cities that could give them very practical advice. And I think that's the beauty of learning South-South and learning immediately and leapfrogging immediately. I'll end off by just using the example of Cities with Nature, for instance, which is a global initiative and which has got high levels of recognition by the United Nations as the reporting and commitment platform for cities worldwide on their nature ambitions, their targets, and their achievements. There they make their information available. So a city deep in the center of Africa, for instance, is able to go onto the platform if they are a member of Cities with Nature, or not a member, a participant, because it's free of charge and easy to join. And they will be able to see exactly what New York City or Los Angeles or London or Johannesburg or a small other village in their same country are doing around this issue or that issue in terms of mainstreaming nature. So that South-South learning just leapfrogs country boundaries, it leapfrogs so many institutional structures that slow things down, and that's exactly what the world needs now. Fast, rapid, bold, collective action where we can learn and share openly and freely as we create knowledge and as we discover what we don't know together. But what we cannot do is wait to have all the answers and then only act. That is no longer possible.
Yeah, thanks, Kobe. I mean, so how are we joining a kind of an open access revolution to make sure that academic research, reports, city information, different stakeholders' information is actually curated and put together in accessible spaces? So maybe to this point sort of leads into a question I wanted to ask you, Sholape. You framed the different roles, public about reach, private about bringing capacity, civil about actually leading the incomes and individuals. And in our work, each of these different sectors speak different languages and often are speaking past each other. And so there's a lot of trust building, and I think Telly, also brought forward some of these ideas. So my question is, how are you building trust and confidence between different stakeholders? What does that look like?
That's an excellent question, and you're entirely right. We all speak different languages. We tend to sit in our different silos and try to operate and then complain about everyone else. And it really does come from the fact that we do speak different languages and we haven't taken the time to understand one another. And so for me, again, it's collaborative platforms, it's inclusive approaches. The more we work on our own and then try to come together, the more it's sort of a Tower of Babel situation. We may not be able to work together, but if we form cross-cutting teams to tackle the solutions as we go, then we're able to learn more about the things that we're doing. And I think for me, again, it's another area where I've seen quite a lot of value from an ICLEI perspective, mostly from a city-to-city from city-to-city perspective in terms of the learning platforms, which we have found incredibly useful. But I think it could also then translate to also helping us to mainstream our stories. And as you said, we started some of these conversations. When we see examples of how these things have worked in other places, it really does help. So I think that could be one way of trying to bring everyone together to understand. Let's form cross-cutting teams. For example, on our side, we've noticed that academia tends to be its own ivory tower and they do their own research. And I really love what Michael said about just co-creating research together and getting in front of it, leading, but letting everyone sort of be part of the same journey. We find academia has tended to be a little bit more removed, and we're making a lot of efforts to incorporate them now. So whenever we're doing any work, instead of just speaking to consulting firms, you should have people in academia in the state on your teams, so that we're all beginning to work together. We're all working on the same problems. We're all, contributing towards finding the solution or the various solutions. I think it's really bringing people together, having that conversation, not trying to speak to each other from our different positions, but really working together on the solution so that we can, find common ground.
Thanks so much. And I think without ado, maybe Telly, if I can bring you in and ask you to reflect on a very sort of similar question. You mentioned the word symbiotic relationship, and we all hope that that's mutually beneficial. But back to your point on you helping governments in the city to operate and follow good governance practices, so that you have a good space to operate as well. And I wondered, could you reflect a bit on some of the needs that you see that you are then you need to respond to in the city, and how are you addressing those and making sure that they're able to operate well so that you're able to operate well?
Thanks, Paul. Firstly, and before I respond specifically to that question, and I think I'll work my way to it very quickly, is that partnerships, and I think Shulapi mentioned this, and I think to some extent Kobe also mentioned this, is that often partnerships don't work. And sometimes, they might not have said this explicitly, but sometimes partnerships just get stuck, or we even fail to get out the door into partnerships. And I think this is by and large because of those real and sometimes perceived barriers between partners. And I say this because, and especially at the local government level, and especially because I've got a history there, is that some cities will only ever go to their natural partners, or those actors that they perceive to be their natural partners, because there are perceived barriers, sometimes around what we know, the depth of knowledge, at a city administrative level or at a leadership level. And sometimes there are real barriers. The policy barriers, for example, in the energy space for the longest time that inhibited cities to fully invest in off-grid solutions and microgrids and so on. So often cities will gravitate to their natural partners. Largely, it would be your donor community, your development agencies. Those are natural partners because they plug the gaps. And cities don't often partner solidly with national departments and provincial governments and communities. And so we often, at the city level, miss opportunities. And I think that's important. And so this brings me, I guess, to my point around our relationship with Nelson Mandela Bay, for example. I think it's well known everywhere that the Bay is in a water crisis. And so we obviously then emerge as the Bay's, as the Metro's natural partner in terms of resolving some of the pressures that result from the water crisis. So the CDC is working on a desalination plant. We are trying to bring to market a project on return effluent so that we alleviate the pressure from the potable water system and refocus our industrial water use towards recycled water. So that would be solutions that we want to plug and play into city level. But then there are those very real policy gaps. Policy barriers in terms of how easily a municipality can offtake from us in terms of renewable energy, water supply, and so on. So I think we need to be able to navigate a space where we make these unnatural or exceptional partnerships become natural and become the obvious cases. And I love what Shulapi said is around how we bring the academic community into the city solution space. How do we bring an industrialized community like ourselves to the table with cities when they're deliberating on their governance, their planning, their budgeting, so that they're planning like we do on a very long-term horizon, because financial sustainability is critical to our survival. So we would like to be able to cross-pollinate those lessons. And certainly we already have very good bonds with the city and ourselves because we are natural partners. But we would love to be able to explore those, what might appear to be unnatural partnerships, I think become very important to me. One point that I really feel like it would be remiss of me not to touch on is this issue around access to data and intelligence and knowledge. And from my history with cities is unfortunately the Achilles heel for cities is that data and knowledge, especially relating to these subjects like climate and sustainability and environmental law, often this data or knowledge and intelligence is commercialized. That they cannot compete in the markets to gain access to these pieces of vital knowledge that they use. So I think Nelson Mandela Bay is sitting on a water crisis that was well understood and well investigated 10 to 12 years ago. But data wasn't available to influence decision-making at the right time. And so now we all scramble for the hills looking for huge capital amounts to invest in huge projects to deal with a problem that's built up incrementally over time. So I think timing, access to information, and unnatural partnerships coming to play at the right time become important. And I mean, I'm perhaps speaking in a very convoluted or existential kind of manner, but I do have a lot of empathy for the plight of cities, but I also have a lot of hope given that cities are well positioned to start building these partnerships that work. Nelson Mandela Bay hosts an amazing university that has done amazing research